Do you feel that? That jolt in your chest that tells you something big just shifted in Los Angeles, quietly, inside a practice court with the shades half drawn, where sneaker squeaks say more than press releases ever will. What if I told you that the conversation around the Lakers' ceiling might be about to change not with a blockbuster trade or a splashy signing, but with 2 practice jerseys, 2 voices in the huddle, and one decision that could tilt the whole defensive identity of this team? If the West is a storm, tonight felt like the pressure dropped right before the thunder settled, sudden, and impossible to ignore. Why did the coaching staff linger longer than usual at the end of drills? Why did certain pairings get extra reps? And why did the starters keep peeking over at the second unit, like they were measuring something they hadn't felt in a wild bite edge menace? Here's what I'll promise you without spoiling the surprise. In the next few minutes, we're going to unpack the single most consequential choice the Lakers can make before opening night. The one that could turn a good team into a terrifying matchup every single night. We're going to look at rotation math that actually makes sense. The ripple effect on Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. How a healthy perimeter of attack changes Anthony Davis's job description. And what it takes physically and psychologically to build a top 5 defense in a league that's allergic to defense. I'll explain why 2 names you already know might be the hinge of the season, why their health changes everything, and why the staff's experiment this week wasn't a drill, it was a message. Stay with me, because when the reveal lands, it's not just a headline. It's a blueprint. Quick pause if you live and breathe purple and gold the way we do. Hit that subscribe and join the community at Lakers News Fan Report. This is where we talk like fans, think like scouts, and ride like family. Let's lock in dots, so let's set the scene. The Lakers have been a two-faced team for a while, now one face that can score in waves when the ball hums, and another that gets dragged into track meets it never asked to run. The paradox has always been cruel. You have one of the greatest defensive quarterbacks of his generation in Anthony Davis, and yet too often you're asking him to patch 10 holes with one hand. Drop, switch, hedge, recover, he'll do it all. But the laws of physics still apply. When your point of attack is porous, AD's job isn't just to protect the rim. It's to time travel. Blow by at the screen? AD needs to be at the level. Late stump from the wing? AD has to erase at the rim. Missed tag in transition? AD is both the last line and the cleanup crew. That's not a system. That's a fire drill. Now zoom in on the off-season and tell me the truth. Didn't you circle one question above all? Health, not theoretical spacing. Not if this role player pops. Health. Because there are 2 players in this rotation whose absences warp the geometry of this team on both ends and whose presence compresses the floor for opponents like a trash compactor. Their names have lived in rumor reports and injury updates, so long you almost forget what they look like when they move with confidence. But ask anyone who's had to bring the ball up the floor against them when they're fresh, and watch the eyes, there's a flinch there. The Lakers have missed that flinch. You can hear the new coaching staff trying to tune a frequency the roster hasn't fully hit since the spring run 2 years ago. Philosophically, this is simple. Create fewer complex rotations for the weak side and more difficult first decisions for the ball handler. That starts at the point of attack and continues through the wing, the chain link that determines whether a D is a goalie or a bodyguard. You don't build a top 5 defense from the paint out in today's NBA. You build it at the nail and at the screen, with hands that bother and feet that buy time. You build it by making lead guards dribble sideways. You build it by forcing wings to bail out of their favorite angles and throw skip passes one beat late. You build it, in other words, by turning advantages into suggestions. Now imagine, just for a second, that the Lakers finally have the personnel healthy enough to play that way for more than a week at a time. Picture the drills you didn't see 2-on-2 nail help. Shell coverage into quick closeouts, scrimmages where the coaches stop play not to scold effort, but to praise timing. Consider what it means when the staff runs the same coverage 3 times in a row, changing only which pair is at the top. That's not random. That's installation. Which brings us to what you came for. The real news is this. The Lakers have both Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt on a full go track, and the staff has begun testing lineups where at least one of them is on the floor in every meaningful stretch. That's the pivot. The experiment wasn't whether they can play together. They can. The question was whether the team could survive, even thrive, by staggering them so the defense never takes a breath. Early signs say yes. In practices this week, Smart took the point of attack assignments that warp an opponent's first read, while Vanderbilt toggled between the best wing and the most dangerous screener, blowing up angles before they formed. And when they were on the court together, the gym got quiet in that way that only happens when offense turns into paperwork. Let's be exact about what's fact and what's me connecting dots. Fact. Both guys have been in the building, active, visible, moving with pace, talking constantly. Fact. The staff has run sequences designed to see how different partners look next to them. Smart with Reeves, Smart with D'Angelo Russell, or whoever handles secondary creation. Vanderbilt with Hachimura, Vanderbilt with stretch big looks, Vanderbilt with smaller groups where he's the de facto foreclosing space. Fact. In controlled scrimmages, the defense sharpened when one of them was on the floor, and sharpened into a blade when both were. Now, the speculation that the early rotation plan is trending toward one in the starting unit and one leading the second unit defense, with deliberate overlap late in halves and after timeouts against hot scorers. The speculation that the staff's private target isn't improved from average to good. It's play with the arrogance of a top-5 defense and let the offense breathe off live ball stops. The speculation that if the reps hold and the health holds, you're going to see closing 5 combinations build around pressure Smart on the ball, Vanderbilt on the star wing, and a D racing, with the 2 offensive spacers determined by matchup and rhythm. And you can see why that changes everyone's jobs. For Reeves, it's relief. He can toggle between secondary handler and connector without carrying the heaviest point of attack ask. For Hachimura, it's clarity more possessions where he can be a strong side spacer and late clock bully rather than an emergency helper flying from the corner. For the centers behind a D, it's simplification. You're no longer solving calculus. You're taking a good geometry test. Even the shooters feel it. When your defense buys an extra 2 seconds per possession, your legs are fresher when the kickout finds you. The difference between front rim and net is sometimes just one good stop on the trip before. Marcus Smart brings something the Lakers have craved, intentional chaos. He'll turn a basic high pick and roll into a trust fall. He jumps a route, and suddenly the opposing point guard is catching the ball 2 feet further outside the arc than he wants, staring at a screen that no longer arrives on time, hearing footsteps that aren't there. He's a professional disruptor, but it's the organization in his violence that makes him special. He'll shade one shoulder to bait a driver into the help. He'll show high then swivel under to disappear the pocket pass. He'll talk a teammate through the exact stunt that erases a baseline skip. People love to say culture like it's incense you burn in the locker room. Culture is a habit of correction. Smart corrects in real time. Jared Vanderbilt changes the floor in a different way. He doesn't just guard 1 through 4. He makes all 4 of those matchups uncomfortable. He doesn't always get the steal. He kills the first plan so you never reach the action your offense was built to find. If Smart turns advantages into suggestions, Vanderbilt turns your comfort zone into a rumor. He's the defender who forces stars to recalibrate mid-dribble, the guy whose closeout is already on your inside hand the second your eyes drift toward the arc. In transition, he's the preventative medicine. In the half court, he's the eraser streak before the chalk even hits the board. The Lakers haven't had that at full health for long enough to imprint it. That's the opportunity. Okay, but what about the offense? That's the classic rebuttal whenever you talk defense in 2025. Can they score enough? Can they shoot enough? Will spacing break? Here's where the stagger is not a compromise. It's a strategy. Start Smart next to your play finishers and let him script the physical tone of the game from the opening tip. He screens with purpose. He hits the paint. He organizes the ball pressure that leads to runouts. Then let Vanderbilt terrorize second units and close games where you're hunting wings. If both are out there, pair them with two shooters who don't need the ball to threaten and a big who can short roll pass. The goal is not to win the math war every night. The goal is to punch first, take rhythm away, and live in the 6 to 8 points per quarter you steal with deflections, dead dribble possessions, and runouts. Good defense is the best spacing, because the best spacing is a 3-on-2. All of this, of course, lives and dies with health and clarity. The first is a matter of monitoring and luck. The second is a matter of courage. Rotation decisions aren't punishments. They're declarations of identity. You can't play everybody 35 minutes. If the staff has the backbone to keep one of Smart or Vanderbilt on the floor whenever it matters, and if they build the late-game packages now instead of improvising in December, what you'll start to see is rhythm, even when shots don't fall. You'll see fewer "oh no" possessions and more "not tonight" possessions. And you'll feel something that hasn't lived in Crypto.com arena consistently for a minute: inevitability. There's also an intangible here I don't want to bury. The Lakers have lacked a certain meanness at the guard spot, a willingness to take matchups personally, to announce to the best scorer on the other side, "You're going to hate this." Smart lives for that. Vanderbilt amplifies it. Ad respects it because it honors his work. Every team that goes deep has a rope that ties the front to the back. Communication travels along it. Trust rides on it. The rope is forged in coverage reps, yes, but it's also forged in eye contact after stops. That's been missing in stretches. This week, it was loud. Let's also talk timeline. Training camp is not about proving you're a champion in October. It's about choosing your problems. If you choose to be a defense-first group with adults at the top of the floor, you accept the nights where spacing hiccups. But you also choose the kind of playoff basketball that doesn't evaporate under pressure. You choose a rotation that can survive the first punch and deliver the second. You choose to make Anthony Davis a multiplier rather than a firefighter. You choose control dots. So where does this go? If the current trajectory holds, the Lakers will open the season with a starting five built to set a defensive tone, and a second unit designed to keep turning the screws. You'll see moments where both Smart and Vanderbilt close, especially against heliocentric guards and jumbo wings. You'll see a staff that tests matchups, that steals minutes by labeling responsibilities clearly. Smart hunt the handle. Vando haunt the star. AD owns the air. The offense will ebb and flow, but the floor will feel tilted in a way Lakers fans recognize from the last time defense was the brand. And not just a quote dot, "Is this all written in ink?" No, and that's important. Fact, they're back, active, and integrated. Fact, the staff is testing staggered minutes and overlap in high-leverage scrimmage windows. Fact, the energy around those reps has been different focus, communicative, sticky. Speculation, that the plan you'll see in preseason is a rehearsal for how the Lakers intend to win tense games in January and survive matchup chess in May. Speculation, that the internal defensive goals are bolder than what anybody will say into a mic today. Speculation, that the leadership group from the film room to the floor understands something basic and beautiful. When you can guard, the game slows down, and when the game slows down, the Lakers can think you to death. My personal read? This is the right gamble. Not the shiny one. Not the headline one. The winning one. I think starting Smart and anchoring the bench with Vanderbilt gives this roster a heartbeat at the exact places last year's team bled out. I think you'll see Reeves look freer, Hachimura look more decisive, and AD look happier, because the best player on a defense should feel supported, not stranded. I think there will be ugly shooting nights that make Twitter loud, and I think those nights will matter less than you fear because of the extra 6 stops that never make the highlight reel. And I think if health cooperates, we'll look back at a nondescript week of training camp work and say, that's where the season decided to be serious. That's the story. The facts are the gym, the voices, the reps. The speculation is the rotation and the ceiling. The belief mine, and I think increasingly is that the path to relevance in this conference runs through discomfort. Make other teams uncomfortable first, for longer, on purpose. If the Lakers commit to that and refuse to blink, this won't be a mood swing. It'll be a standard.